I'm WG and it's time for our E0 Sereniel showcase. So you've already seen a brief introduction of Senmetsu. And yeah, let's talk about everything Sereniel, what kind of builds I've been aiming for, what kind of things and feats we were able to achieve with E0, and what your Sereniel can do for you and what you should expect from her. First, let's set the tone a bit and have a look at yeah, starting with our manifest egos. As you can see, we had her on E0, and then memory fragment wise, still the best set is the 4-piece 2-piece combination, with the crit damage set being slightly better than the attack set so long as they have equivalent substats. So this would, for example, be the optimal thing to get. Once more, one of the reasons why you want to aim for that 60% crit chance is so that you can get the additional 5% modifier here, but at the end of the day, it's something to work towards. It's not something you have to feel bad about missing, meaning that you are also just fine being below at around the 40 to 50% crit chance mark. And potential wise, you can see we maxed out the crit chance, maxed out the unique potential, are working on the crit damage potential, and this potential is maxed out with all of these being untouched that we might just fix in the future. So to get to that 60%, just again brief rundown, you'll have 13% base if you max out the potential, 27 then from the piece right here, and then with the 5 remaining pieces you need an average of around 3.5% crit chance to make it happen, and that is then a Sereniel in terms of memories. And then partner wise, the 2 prime choices are either going to be getting yourself a Peko or using Yuri. Yuri brings the benefit of you not having to summon for her, of giving you straight out of the gate an 18% attack bonus. It can take quite a bit at least for you to still do the shuffle so you can get the remaining damage bonus, but you get big utility in the dual draw. But don't get me wrong, Peko is by all means worth it in that you get 3 different damage buffs, an 8% attack buff, a 30% flat buff, and a 15% multiplicative against ravage targets. And then currently probably the strongest ego skill in terms of raw damage output is the Overclock Beacon, which is an upgrade that stays throughout the whole duration of the fight and every single turn applies plus 25% crit chance the moment you break the enemy for the very first time. So that is Peko, that's also the unit we are going to be using. And then yeah, let's just so we can get it out of the way, the memory save data we'll be showing off here is going to be this quadruple homing laser with divine epiphanies, but by no means is that what you need to get. You are absolutely just fine having 1, 2 or 3 homing lasers, and they do not need these divine epiphanies. You can still absolutely shoot high, but that is what you really want to aim for at least with our current point of knowledge, to really max out that Sereniel potential. And then what is further to be said is we also have the, you could say, the most reliable, the most effective epiphany, and that is the Afterglow on Ravage or a turn start move to hand, because what this allows you to do is guarantee that every single turn you play, you'll have all of these on your hand and then draw after, meaning it is impossible for you to draw into those, so they technically also thin your deck by 4 cards because you can never pull into them. So that is the homing lasers. That is the ones we went for. And just again, super speedrun. If you wanted a bit more in depth, look at my Sereniel save data farming guide or even the Sereniel guide and review. But speedrun wise, this one is really darn good. This one is incredibly solid. This one is the highest damage option, but you do need the Afterglow from different sources, but nothing hits like this hits. And then these two with the move all and the create. The create can be really good if you rely on a bunch of parachuting lasers, because if you create them, you can then also activate them with the parachuting lasers. And also if you use this and then break the target, more homing lasers will come back to your hand. And this one is entirely situational, but best used for turns where you, for example, use all your homing lasers and the enemy still has like half a break bar left. You can then play this out, get the damage, get the Afterglow, get all your homing lasers preemptively back to use them again to break the target so they all come back. Only drawback on the 2 of them we just mentioned is the fact that they never come back upon Ravage, meaning you'd have to draw into them or get them through Jokers, card searches, or yeah, just straight up draw. Plasma Missiles, the fun strat is using either basic epiphanies or neutral epiphanies, which are epiphanies that aren't listed in the top 5. Something like 1 draw, 1 AP, extra morale. There's a bunch of those, and then having those be triggered twice because this card triggers itself again if it doesn't break. Same is true for the first epiphany. And then the favorites are, for example, Instinct Weakness, meaning you always be type effective for more damage, for more break, and also get the damage bonus. Or this right here, if you can play out a bunch of homing lasers, this can stack up really high. Like for example, in the Great Rift, not only is your deck 1 card shorter, it is also unique, increasing the copy chances for homing lasers. But if you, for example, play 40 homing lasers, this card is going to do 1250% damage. So it just does its damage quite well. And then here you have the homing laser in the draw pile. The main way I would probably advise for you to play this is start looking at this more once you get the E1 or beyond, and that is because with the pale shooting star you can then get those out of your draw pile and use them instantly without having to draw into them, or them not being as debilitating if you have the E2, because even if you draw into them, you'll at least get an additional draw from the E2. So that is the Plasma Missile. Then Shining Core, this card is almost a must-have in terms of how good it is. It is just so good. You have it always on hand, you get 2 homing lasers, and every time you ravage in your hand, you create 2 more. This card is pretty much infinite value. The more you break, the more you get. It is an absolute chaos annihilator. This one is really variable, can be really fun in terms of you just picking your situational homing laser. Like for example this one, you can then pick to get your homing lasers back whenever you should need them. This one just allows you to use homing lasers more often before they exhaust themselves, meaning they can also come back into your hand more often. Here it's just straightforward 3 homing lasers, which is honestly fine enough. And then this one here just gives you a bunch of homing lasers. Really depends on playstyle, but it's a fun card regardless. Coming into the last card right here, current preferred favorites are either the 8 hitter, so long as you break with your last hit, or the 1 hit per homing laser, where if you then use this after a target gets broken, all the homing lasers come into your hand, turning this into like a 6, 7, 8, 9 hitter. And then also here, this one is just more of like an AoE type scenario. If in an AoE or even in a hyperspace basin scenario, you can create a bunch of homing lasers with this one. Here, the only drawback on this card is it still has the highest base damage, it does the tenacity damage, but it only reduces its cost if this is the card you use to break the target. Still quite good. And this one here, throughout the retain, one of the drawbacks is this is only until next use, but still you can play this, and you could also try running this with Orlea and Beryl if you wanna try out something a bit more fun. So that is yeah, the brief download, the brief overview. And as I've already shown before, in terms of divine epiphanies, that's like the peak of what you would want to aim for, but by no means is it what you need to go for. You can see there is a lot of variety in what you want to copy, what you could do, and especially once you get into that E2, E1 even, getting duplicates of pale shooting lasers, having the ability to have 2 cards that can activate up to 5 homing lasers at no additional cost to the card itself, just being 2 cost, is incredibly strong. And yeah, that's that in terms. Again, if you want more specifics, you can watch the Save Data specific guide, where we go a bit more in depth in the hows, whys, whens, and whats. So now let's briefly just quickly again get it out of the way, do a bit of house cleaning, get the teams right here. So teams, again, this still stays similar to what I think is fun, but the most important part is Sereniel is a Chaos Destroyer. She's a Chaos hard carry. Whoever you pair her up with, you're going to succeed. This is still my most fun teams in terms of just raw synergy, but the most solid team might just be Sereniel, Mika, and then legit anybody else. Once more here, you can swap out Ray for any of these, you could swap out Shizuru for any of these, and any of these team comps can find you success. You can play around with them, you can have a bunch of fun. So that's it in terms of teams. That's that. So Chaos, we already pretty much talked about it. She's going to be the best unit you could bring into a Chaos. The higher in epiphanies you go, the more ridiculous it becomes. E2 e5, whatever the like. So that is the chaos checked off. So now we are going to be talking about the Great Rift specifically, and that is because, yeah, you can see right here we got ourselves a score of 1.16 million, which is a current rank of 190. But besides the point, and that is, honestly, don't take the Great Rift too seriously. There is a massive point gap. Like, let me give you an example. For our record status for this 1.16 million run, we killed the boss, I believe, 5 times. We killed the boss 5 times. If I wanted to go to just 1.3 million, I would have to kill the boss an additional 10 times. So there's a massive gap in like score that you need to get. So really what you need to know is, with an E0 Sereniel, obviously all of these scores, you can absolutely still make it into Masters. If you refine your deck, you could make it into the top 10 if you feel like it. But towards the high end, you're going to see E2s, E4s, and E6 just being more prevalent. And that is just because it's a raw damage boss. And getting more damage out of these epiphanies allows you to get a higher score. Duh, right? Skill can only take you so far. But in terms of like decks that you need to build, I just kind of want to like make sure that you all aren't as worried about it. This was the score that we used to just get an easy million, and that is we have a Cassius. The only thing you need on Cassius is the choose quest card and the double quest card on completion. Those two are the only things you need. Everything else is more subjective. For everything else, you can just want to try to get as much morale as you can physically get, and also just add in a bunch of neutral cards. But this deck is honestly super straightforward. And then, surprise, surprise, I actually used a empty deck to get the million score. And we did also die in round 7 because I didn't yet know about the healing glitch. So you could make it to like 1.1 million decently reasonable without even having to go into like building an additional Selena. And that's just because of how the like scoring curve works. So even with an empty deck, even without anything else, you can absolutely score high with an E0 Sereniel. It's not like the million or the 1 point or the 1.2 million scores really gated behind epiphanies, ego manifestations, right? So now let's just have a little bit of fun. Let me show you a little bit of how this all works. So for the first part here, we're just going to be using your classical Cassius, Selena, and then Sereniel. Just so we can also, I guess, have a bit of how it looked in the clips. And then you can just see that there is a lot of value you can just gain out of this. So, as I talked about it before, you get all of these cards in your hand before your draw, meaning your first starting hand just always looks massive. Here we're just going to get ourselves the mark damage and the passion upgrade card damage. It really isn't that relevant. And then here we can already just get ourselves more homing lasers and start laying into the boss. So we just shoot out our homing lasers like this. And then that's pretty much it for turn 1. You can see there isn't really much more to do, but we did already get decently close to breaking the boss. So now we get all 4 of them back. We can use our Joker to get the bigger synergy card in the Pop-Eyed Popper, so that we can now use that card and get ourselves the 000 quest, so we get additional value. Here we have the Negotiate card, which gives the enemy 2 morale, but also gives us 2 morale. We can play out the high-powered scope just because. And then here with the use of our homing lasers, you see we'll be able to then get the final break we need. Important to note here, the homing laser used to break the card won't be returned. So there is extra value to making sure you break the enemy without using your homing laser, or you want to get your homing lasers out first and then break the enemy, but it's a bit more on the min-max side, which is why we only have 3 of those in our hand. And you can see we got not only the ones back we created first with the upgrade card, but also an additional ones, again, because we broke the enemy. And then all of these are going to work together with the Cassius Create card to give us this turn of a sweet 14,000 damage. These decks here used, at least the Cassius deck used, is exactly the deck you've seen before. And then here, for example, we have a bit more of like the Great Rift setup with the tactical maneuver for our Selena, but it's not really going to be necessary, nor is it going to do a whole bunch. So here we just shoot out our lasers first. Make sure we get everything else out of the way. And then here we just kind of have to see how it goes. So we just use the Cassie's ult just to give ourselves a couple more cards. Let's see what the luck of the draw has for us. We got a bit lucky in the double draw cards, meaning we'll be able to play a couple more cards this turn. As you can see now, from now on, every single one of our cards is going to be worth twice. So we're skipping out on being able to use the pay a shooting star. And then here we just deal damage based on how many tenacity bars the enemy is missing. So now we're going into our turn 4. We've done a significant amount of damage to the boss already. And then let's see if we hopefully can... Yep, perfect. So we were able to play out all our homing lasers without breaking the boss. We can also get rid of the triple zeros just to make some hand space. And then here we can use the Cobalt Light to do the final break. So we reduce its cost, we get the damage increase, we get all our homing lasers back. And then we have 2 choices here. So for example, we could use the recharge tenacity. One of the bigger problems is, and one of the reasons why it looks so great in Rift, is the boss really doesn't have that many tenacity bars, right? The boss in Rift doesn't have that many tenacity bars. He doesn't fill up to that many. So you can see we weren't even able to break him even though we used all of those cards. So for example, we would have in this case here been better off just attacking him like this. We would have gained more damage because the enemy would have been ravaged, meaning our ravage set would have been more efficient. But that is kind of Sereniel in combination with Cassius and Selena. But even in a vacuum, she can absolutely annihilate whatever you want her to annihilate. So here we again have a double 0 card deck. So it's just going to be herself versus the fully maxed out boss. So for this one, we'll just start off with our homing lasers. Create some more homing lasers, who could have guessed. And then get some attacks in. Here use the pay a shooting star to use 3 of our homing lasers. If we had E1, we would be using 5 instead, which was almost guarantee us the break. You can see here we are close, but we do get the break with the basic attack, get all our homing lasers back, and then can just massively lay into the boss. We also have the plasma missile that gets the massive 600% increase just because the target is broken. So that's why it then hits for a rather sad number, I guess, on the crits. But here we also have our partner effect active, which we didn't get active last time. So we can then just go in and lay into the boss, and you can see, yeah, just she by herself with a beautiful 12,000 damage turn. And then, yeah, just continue laying into the boss. And here we have the Cobalt Light with the power of, big breaks, so that we can once again get all the cards back and continue with our turn like nothing happened. And also we now this time are up to around, I think with this deck specifically, a 95% crit chance, and that is due to the 10% increased crit chance to 0 cost cards combined with the 25% partner effect and a base crit chance of 62.2. So we are around at 97.2% crit chance. So it is absolutely possible for somebody like a Sereniel to get pretty darn close to what is reasonably possible in Chaos Zero Nightmare in terms of crit chance. And then here you can see we brought the boss below the health bar, so he healed himself up, which makes this fight take a little longer in terms of against, like, for example, characters that could just instantly burst the boss with like one big instance of damage. So that's something to at least be kept in mind a little bit. But then we still have no problem already getting pretty darn close to killing the boss at the end of turn 3. And then here, we can once more, you can really see the consistency of the like get back to hand, use to hand again, which can absolutely make it worth it, because she becomes a lot more self-sufficient in terms of what she can do. But if you, for example, go with like the Ravage double hitter, so long as your teammates are there and can support her in terms of what she does, you are going to get incredible numbers out of that epiphany. So that is then here the family head, and even in terms of like just beating up on other enemies, you're going to have the easiest time possible to just clear runs. So for example, something I did and what you can do as well is they now released the new modes in hard mode chapter 8, but also more importantly, when you go back to chapter 3 or 1 or 2 or 3, they've also released abyss mode. The only thing you need to know, it's a bunch of XP, bunch of gems, bunch of resources, bunch of credits, bunch of upgrade materials, and it's a lot of stages, especially with the better missions also getting transferred from normal and hard mode. But one of the solutions I found to be quite easy is to just get yourself somebody like a Mika as a healer, somebody like a Kalib, or just a more defensive unit than just a Sereniel in really any deck variation. Doesn't have to be a deck like this, could just be even a deck like this. Any deck really that features this Shining Core card, and then you can head into the fight, put your fight on auto, watch like a movie, watch a series, and she's pretty much gonna annihilate the fight for you, right? She'll pretty much take care of business of the enemy's health bars. Every time she deletes the tenacity bar, she'll get more effective, she'll get more of her bars, and yeah, that's how she pretty much dominates better missions. And then even in simulation, you can pretty much take on whatever you want to take on. Like for example, you could easily beat the Wailing Prodigy with her. For Fear Encounter, the only important part is the same as it's true for Malin and Luke. You would have to find either the Wanderer of the Void neutral card to stop action count, or the Rally to give you 3 more action count, so that you can deal with Judas, because Judas really doesn't like you playing a bunch of cards. So that is the weekly bosses, and obviously the same is true, even more true for example, potential. Like even with this multi-stage potential, it looks absolutely ridiculous in terms of like raw spam, right? The potential here is like the perfect stage to use it on. Has a bunch of low health enemies, you can play out the lasers, and then you're basically going to break these enemies faster than you can look. Not only is every one of these enemies going to give you 1 AP upon break, it's also going to give you all your lasers back, and then you can basically spam lasers for days. You don't even have to look at what you're doing, and that is kind of a bit of yeah, Sereniel in a nutshell, you could say. And then just as a last one, we might as well just take on a bit more of a smaller boss, like for example this Flame Ops 10 with a bit more of a reasonable deck. So for example, let's see what we can find ourselves here, which isn't as great. Something a bit more standard. The AP Divine could be fun. Here we have the homing lasers. One more time. Select and create. I kind of don't want to use anything with Divine Epiphanies just for like purpose of showing things. But even with the... well, I mean, this deck is still pretty good, right? Has a good weapon, has a good ring, has probably a good chest piece. Didn't quite check too closely. But yeah, so for example here, yeah, has the Nightmare chest piece. So we can get rid of some cards here. You can see he has a way smaller break bar than what you're kind of used to from the event boss. So here we are obviously going to start off a little slower and then ramp into a bit more damage. Get the break in, get the extra AP, get all our cards back, use all our cards. You can just see the amount of homing laser starts becoming a little ridiculous. And then there you go, a nothing too crazy, straightforward deck with multiple ways, and you just one-shot the guy in a single turn. So that is pretty much E0 Sereniel. She's everything she was meant to be and then some, and she is really a really good investment. Should also be pretty future-proof in terms of just annihilating any game mode she comes across. And yeah, lasers are her game, damage is her name, and Sereniel showcase out. Peace!